Great. So it's an honor to be among all of you. And this is my first visit to Mumbai after the whole COVID pandemic. I'm based in Singapore, and I lead the technology team at Solace. So I'll be taking 15 minutes of your time going through some of these innovations, trying to take the lead from the esteemed panel that we heard from, and then Dr. Rajan. Lots of very, very interesting thoughts around metaverse to cryptography and blockchain to IoT. And I've had the honor to work in some of these areas with the BFSI industry and also beyond that. So just to get started, just to do a little bit of an exercise. So can I request you to raise your hand if you have any sort of trading done through brokers or whichever mechanisms at BSE and NSE? So almost everybody. Okay, so now maybe raise the other hand for some exercising. If you've interacted with Jio or Airtel for any phone activations or recharges, almost everybody. Okay, have you banked with any of these organizations? Now, I don't have permissions to put the Indian banking logos here, which we have some of, but any of these global banks, if you have any banking experience with them. So a few hands, fantastic. And lastly, have you ever taken a flight to any of these countries, US, Canada, anywhere in Europe, Singapore? Probably everybody. So if you've done any of this, you've actually experienced behind the scenes without realizing real-time event streaming with Solace. So I work for Solace, and Solace is the backbone for all of these systems that you see, all of these interactions from the Federal Aviation Agency in the US, from an airspace management to Singapore to Eurocontrol, NAV Canada, to doing recharges, order to activations, lots of use cases at India scale, which is massive, as we all know, for NSE and BSE or Jio and Airtel, to being the backbone for all of these banks. And what is the joining factor of all of such use cases is moving data at a very high speed in real time, right? So what is this moving data all about, right? So, and what are the possibilities? Now, we all know about Twitter. It's been in the news with the acquisition quite a bit these days. But I was just looking at what's trending on Twitter over the past couple of days. And it's these hashtags. So it's the Vijay Diwas, it's the 5G auction in India. Crypto is always trending. Zomato has been trending. So if you want to subscribe to any of these feeds, any of these events, like what is happening in the 5G auction, we subscribe to the hashtag, the Twitter hashtag of 5G auction or whatever relevant hashtags. Do we do this in our enterprise? As we've heard the previous panel also talk about, information moving in real time can be a game changer. Now, imagine if you want to do real-time KYC, if you want to have cross-sell, upsell offers offered on the back of a payment. Let's say you spot a recurring payment in a bank, and this is to an educational institution, and you want to proactively offer some sort of an education loan to that particular customer. How do you tap in to the information that is flowing through the BFSI enterprise systems in real time? Event-driven architecture allows you to do that. And the equivalent of these Twitter hashtags that you see are what we call topics. Now, the technocrats here would already probably be familiar with this, but we've also heard Dr. Rajan talk about standardizations, and then the panelists using open standards such as MQTT, AMQP, REST, and subscribing to topics. Now, you can see some technology there, but if I want to subscribe to all payments that were canceled, that's what I tune into. And this is all based on standards. What makes this information flow in to a network, within a bank, within any organization, is what we call the event mesh. So Solace is a provider of an event mesh. There are others also. There's an open source event mesh initiative going on under Apache as well. But if you had a fabric that connects the organization, including blockchain, on-chain, off-chain integration, in which you can publish events and you can subscribe to events. Your AI models, your machine learning models, your fraud detection systems, your customer experience systems could all benefit and could all become real time. And some banks are already doing it. Others, I'm sure, will follow over time. And lastly, how do you catalog all of these events? Just like you have API catalogs, what about an event catalog? Like, is a loan origination event available on the mesh? Where does it live on the catalog? So getting to the three-step process of adopting this event-driven approach for real-time transformations, from a Solus perspective, we help enterprises become real-time and connected through an event-driven architecture. And how you could do it with, again, any technology of your choice, you need to liberate the data that is there in your enterprise. You might already be implementing technology to solve business problems around APIs, around data mesh. You may have an iPaaS strategy, a microservices strategy. We've heard about IoT. We've heard a little less about cloud in the morning. But as you adopt any of these technologies, how do you tie them together? Right? So that's step one, liberating the data in your enterprise by virtue of events. Right? That's step one. Step number two, as you liberate that data, this could be from your core banking systems, could be from your journal ledgers, how do you modernize by adopting any of these technologies to create data as a product, to have APIs that are asynchronous for better customer experience and for them to operate at India scale? And then lastly, how do you alert and inform? So step three is alerting and informing. So liberate, modernize, alert and inform your stakeholders, your customers, your business users through an event mesh as a backbone for these events to flow. So diving a little deeper, and I'll skip through the animation. So this is what an event mesh can typically do for you. So it allows you to connect various systems on premises. If you have a cloud plan in the cloud, from an IoT perspective with devices, so loan origination, for example, and then monitoring a loan for a particular, let's say you loaned a tractor. Is the tractor operational? That's an IoT scenario, so those events can be streaming in. And then consumption of these events through microservices or analytics platforms, and then cataloging and knowing what events are there on the mesh through the event portal. So it gets implemented incrementally. You'll start with a very simple broker, and from a Solus perspective, the very initial broker, the first one, event broker that does publish, subscribe, is completely free. You can just download it off Docker Hub or from our website also. Just put it in production, no questions asked. And then gradually, use case by use case, you create a mesh in which you can then stream information, right? Also, we've talked about transparency this morning. So while these events are flowing, so in a blockchain, everything is recorded, but not everything is on a blockchain. How do you do traceability of a corporate payment? How do you actually shine light over the information that is flowing through the enterprise? You do that using standards such as OpenTelemetry and using distributed tracing. So the mesh here supports all of that as well, right? So with that, I'd like to just spend the next few minutes looking at a few use cases, both from the banking industry and beyond. And this is all publicly available information. This was a talk that was given by ANZ Bank a couple of months ago at the EDA Summit, the second EDA Summit. And you can just look at the EDA Summit YouTube channel to get the full video. The link is embedded as well, where ANZ Bank have modernized their payment systems from batch and also from the old message queuing mechanisms. They were using MQs towards an event-driven, topic-routed mesh architecture. And as per them, so the screenshot is a bit small, but if the numbers here, as per them, they are experiencing 80% faster processing time for payments, retail and corporate, a 30% reduction in the compute that was being used for processing these payments, 80% improvement in overall transaction processing latencies. So payments are getting processed faster, And then the byproduct of all of this is real-time business and technical statistics are just flowing from the mesh into any applications that they want. Right? So the implementation is an API mesh and an event mesh, and various applications are publishing and subscribing business events to them. Another example I can give is Standard Chartered Bank. Again, these are the ones I can publicly talk about, where they've explained their journey from on-premises to cloud, from a very point-to-point architecture to a service-oriented architecture to now an API and event architecture, where again they are using the mesh also as a migration tool to leverage the cloud wherever it makes sense. So let's say you have a brand new use case that from a security and regulation perspective you can put in a cloud, you can leverage the cloud native ecosystems. How do you connect your on-premises systems with the cloud systems? So you drop a broker on premises, an event broker that does guaranteed, secure, publish, subscribe. You drop a broker in the cloud and you create a mesh like this, and then you're following that event taxonomy to publish and subscribe. Another couple of examples, not from the banking industry, but I thought they're relevant. We should always look at other industries where we can learn from. We've talked about human impact, so Dr. Rajan talked a lot about it actually. We've experienced Roche, one of the biggest pharma companies in the world, reduce the time to therapy for patients. So once a patient has been diagnosed with a problem, to the time that therapy can start for that particular patient by 50%. So this approach of leveraging data as a product in real time is actually saving lives. And they are moving further and further with integration being reimagined as a tool, this glue that binds all our systems and people to be an enabler for real-time data movement and hence causing human impact, not just business impact. And what they've ended up doing is creating this global mesh where on one hand diagnostic robots are streaming events in, on the other hand factories are connected based on what kind of medicines and what's the demand and what needs to be created. And then the whole patient management systems, the SAPs of the world are also publishing and subscribing. And one use case at a time, from Industry 4.0 to digital supply chain, they're all coming together. Right? And the last couple of use cases I'd like to talk about, again, diverging to a non-banking industry, but pretty critical from a trade finance and banking plus supply chain interaction standpoint. So we've experienced from a customer satisfaction standpoint that loyalty points should be credited in real time. Right? The moment you, let's say, board a plane, your points should be credited at that point in time. In banking interactions as well, it's similar. Any interactions that you have with a bank, the customer experience, the more real time it is, the better it is. And doing all of these things in real time, when the cost per transaction is only reducing, it has to reduce for it to make business sense, but the volume of transactions are increasing. So how do you actually solve that problem? You solve it, again, think of it this way. Network from about 2015 onwards, mainstream network is faster than disk. So we heard about 5G coming and the power of 5G and the power of smartphone. We all know this, but we've not really probably thought about it, that we are not downloading our music or movies anymore. We are streaming them. Why is that possible? Because network today is faster than disk. So business transactions, financial and non-financial, should also be streamed. They can be streamed. The underlying technology supports it, and an event mesh becomes a vehicle. In this particular case, real-time inventory in retail stores like IKEA or Cartier, and if you heard about the metaverse, IWC, one of the most prominent watch brands in the world, they also have opened a metaverse shop, and transactions in the metaverse are interacting with the universe, with the real systems through an event mesh. Right? They're also tracking watches in stores and offering better customer loyalty by showing hyper-personalized watches as you move from one store to the other. coming back to banking, and this is my last slide. So Solis's heritage in banking has been investment banking, trading, foreign exchange systems. That's where the event mesh idea was born without giving it that name. We coined the term that Gartner has since adopted. But about 50% of the world's foreign exchange trading goes over Solis, whether it's pricing, information, settlement, regulation, risk, etc. And you can imagine when US dollar to INR changes in New York, we want it in Mumbai and Singapore and London and Tokyo immediately. That is a publish subscribe problem that has been going on. It has been solved for many, many years in a distributed event streaming mechanism. And from fraud detection to cross-sell, upsell systems to order fulfillment, execution management systems have been doing that event publishing and subscribing for a long time, right? We're doing it at low latency, like microsecond latency, at high throughput, millions of messages per second, without losing anything, in a secure, guaranteed manner. So if you want to know more about any of these architectures, if this makes you think a bit differently about how you're approaching your architectural problems, liberate, modernize, inform the world, those 3 steps. We have a booth outside. I'll be happy to talk to you. Thank you very much.